Everyone, and I repeat, everyone expected the Suns to beat the Orlando Magic on Saturday night at home, but we learned quite a bit about this team anyway, even despite the expected win. What did the debuts of Tory Craig and Aaron Holiday teach us about the Phoenix Suns? How does it fit into what we've already been seeing, and what does it mean for the future? All of that coming up on Locked On Suns.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a contributor at Suns.com, as well as Dime Magazine, and a credentialed media member covering the Suns the past 5 seasons. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen each and every day. I am sure a ton of you found us recently by way of the trade deadline, and that is totally fine. Maybe it was the win streaks. I don't know, but welcome. You are welcome here. You are a part of the community. You are a part of this fan base. I treasure you dearly. If you have not subscribed on YouTube already, go ahead and click that subscribe button. You could get Kelly Oubre, who I am going to bobble right there for you. He could be yours. I'm doing that giveaway when we get to 1,000 subscribers, and we are just a few away, so hit that button. Thank you, everybody listening across all podcast platforms as well. Make sure, of course, you can follow us at Locked On PHX Suns to keep up with everything if that's more your speed. Let's get to it. The Suns beating the Orlando Magic handily, not really ever in doubt, 132-105. I'm not going to spend too much time breaking the game down in terms of what happened and the rhythms of it. The Suns were up double digits after one. They were up almost 15 at halftime and blew the top off in the third quarter. They outscored Orlando in every single quarter, and they should have. So we won't go into the wanes and waxes of the game, but what we will do is talk about the debut of Tory Craig and the debut of Aaron Holiday and sort of what it means for this team, because I think there are some ways in which the additions of Craig and Holiday are going to just be seamless. It's just an addition to what the Suns have already been doing, what they've already been doing well, what we know they want their identity to be. Of course, Craig was a huge part of that identity last year, so that shouldn't surprise anybody. But in some ways, I actually think we could see Monty use those guys to change things up a bit. So what we saw in game one of the return of Tory Craig and the addition of Aaron Holiday is that the Suns played incredibly fast. So I want to really get into that as we go along, but more specifically than that, it wasn't just pace. It was how the Suns played with rhythm throughout the whole game, right? Because a lot of the time we think of speed as something that we only notice it when it's transition points, fast break buckets, big transition dunks and alley-oops, or, momentum plays that make the other coach call a timeout. It's those little things that tend to get, or those big things, I guess, that tend to get the highlight and the attention. But what actually happened in this one was the Suns picking up where they left off against Milwaukee and ripping through reads really fast. And I actually think what's interesting about the Suns is that you can tell when they are playing with good pace in all aspects of the game, in half-court possessions, in transition possessions, on the fast break, off of made shots, off of turnovers, off of missed shots, every aspect of the game, you can almost drill that down to if their points in the paint are high. And what's fascinating is the Suns' points in the paint were high in both of these past 2 games, and not coincidentally, they scored 130 plus in both of these games. Should not surprise anybody. If you're getting easy layups and dunks, you should see that accounted for in the points in the paint. But the Suns in both of those games scored 130 plus, but they also scored 68 exactly in both games in the paint. Now, they also, in terms of their pace, were able to push in both games, and you noticed it in the stats. If you look at pace, which is just possessions per game, the Suns on the game on Saturday night against Orlando was almost 108 It was 108 possessions. In against Milwaukee, it was 99.4, which is weird. Sometimes I think things get screwed up where it shows a point, whatever, a decimal point of a possession. That obviously can't happen. So insignificant. The point is they pushed. And assists, you see it too. 35 assists, 40 assists against the Orlando Magic. 3-point attempts, because most of the time this team is not going to take threes unless they are open. So if you're generating those open shots and you're taking a lot of those threes, that's going to be a sign that this offense is working as well. 34 against Orlando, 30 against Milwaukee. So all of those are the big picture numbers. Now you're wondering, okay, how did Craig and Holiday fit into that? And the answer is Holiday we'll get to. I thought he played fairly well in 0.5. I think the early impression is that, from what we've seen from him through his 4 years in the league and his first 9 minutes in a Suns uniform, I think he will fit. I want to get to him in depth later in the show. I think the fit will be pretty solid, though. The main area that you saw a lot of this come to life was through Tory Craig, and I cannot give this guy enough praise for how effectively he fit into this team. I felt like, I understand it's the Magic and they don't play a lick of defense because they're young. I mean, I'm not, I don't know what their defensive rating is over the course of the whole season or anything else. But when you're seeing a young team go up against an older team, it's always going to help. But Tory Craig played within this system, I would say maybe better than almost any other time I can remember. Like last night was one of his best games as a Sun, and it came in the beginning of his second term here. It's wild to think about. But if you go through, first of all, something about being in purple and orange makes him shoot better. I don't quite know what it is. He had shot decently. I believe it was 33% from deep against or for the Pacers this season. But he comes in, he immediately 2 of 3 from deep. The form looks special and nice and all the good stuff we noted about him last year when he made like 40% in the regular season and then, kept the defense honest in the playoffs. I don't know what it is. Obviously he's getting open shots more consistently than he usually does in Denver or in Indiana because of the presence of Chris Paul and everything else. But that's only one part of it. The ability to know kind of where to be and the green light that he has and being comfortable taking those shots. That's huge. But the biggest part is 4 assists for Tory Craig. And something about this guy makes the Suns feel comfortable running. And I don't mean to harp on that, but it is definitely true. The Suns, with his energy, they seem to feed off of it. And it's noticeable when he is out there that they run more, that they feel comfortable doing that because he is sort of a dual threat. If you feel comfortable that he can knock down an open 3, but you also know that he has an athletic advantage on everybody, and not everybody, but he has an athletic advantage more often than not, and he is pretty comfortable putting the ball on the ground if you need him to, right? He can catch the ball at the top of the key, take a couple of dribbles, and go in for a layup or a dunk. Like, he's not somebody that has to catch the ball at the basket, and that's the only way he'll feel empowered to try to score. So all of that helps. But again, that's just on the fast break, right? Those are just the transition, the flashy moments that we all remember. What he was doing with those 4 assists is playing with pace in the half court. And I want to talk about the lineup aspect of that because I think that was a key part of this. But just from a IQ feel standpoint, something about this system is just, it unlocks Tory Craig. You are seeing him be a screener where he's able to slip the screen. He hardly ever held the screen. It's the same thing Mikal Bridges does. If you see Mikal Bridges screening as part of a called play or an orchestrated moment by the Suns in the half court, he's going to be slipping the screen. And Craig picked right up there like Bridges has perfected. And it felt like he had been playing right alongside Bridges or alongside Paul this whole season. And he's slipping those screens, catching the ball on the short roll, and passing it out to shooters as if he's freaking Blake Griffin or Draymond Green. It was unreal to watch. It honestly was new. This is not really something that I feel like he did a lot last season. And again, I think the lineup aspect is part of that. So I want to talk about that too. but passed the test with flying colors. Again, understand it was Orlando. I'm not saying pencil Craig in for 15, 5, and 5 every night and a bench leading plus 21, a team leading plus 21. Like, this was far and away, definitely a game where you could feel the excitement of being back really seemed to propel him. But that quickness with which he was able to play was instrumental. I want to talk a little bit more about the lineups where he excelled and the numbers behind the pace that he was able to play with in just 1 second. First, though, guys, a quick word from our sponsor, which is... play the Jeopardy music here because I am dealing with a little bit of slow internet. Built Bar. It's February already, guys. I'm recording this right before I head over to my parents' house for the Super Bowl. And look, the dog days of the winter and the parties and everything else, none of that makes it easy to stick to your New Year's resolutions, but Built Bar can be part of the answer. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right this year because of Built Bar. I love to eat them. They make it easy to get a snack, a pick-me-up that I know I don't have to worry is going to feel good in my body and actually be good for me. Some snacks, many snacks, cannot say the same, right? Built Bar can be part of the solution. You already know about the delicious traditional Built Bars, which with flavors like peanut butter brownie or mint or strawberry, but Puffs, Built Bar Puffs, are the latest delicious invention of the great people over at Built, and they are the first ever protein-infused marshmallows. So try some of the Built Bar Puff flavors like cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, or banana cream pie, or my personal favorite, lemon cheesecake, and open your eyes to something yet another new delicious treat to help you stick to your goals. Go to Built.com, guys. Check it all out. Pick your favorite. Use the promo code LOCK15 when you make your purchase to get 15% off your next order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. I want to talk about the ways in which the Suns are able to use Tory Craig a little bit more specifically. We are going to get to Aaron Holiday as well because I think there's some more rotational stuff that he could get that he could impact here for the Suns when they get healthy. But what I want to start off with is the numbers behind the speed that the Suns are playing with, because I don't think it is necessarily getting enough attention. And I actually thought Kellen Olson wrote a really good story at ArizonaSports.com about the Suns' offensive, I guess, infusion, explosion, whatever you want to call it. Lately, they quietly have scored 110 or more points in 8 out of their past 9 games and 10 out of their past 12 games. So they are kicking it into high gear basically since the start of the year on offense. They have been scoring at an incredible rate, and Kellen was able to get some comments about that. But the pace part of this is a big reason why as well. So on the season, the Suns are tied for fifth in seconds per possession. And here's why that number is the better one to look at than just pace, because pace is dependent on what the opponent does. The 7 seconds or less Suns can go as fast as they want. Obviously, we know it wasn't actually 7 a lot of the time. That's exaggerated. Whatever. It doesn't matter. But then if, the Dallas Mavericks slow it down to a crawl and toss it to the elbow for a Dirk post-up, then, the pace is not representative of 7 seconds or less. It's representative of, 7 seconds on one side of the court and then, 20 on the other side of the court, right? So seconds per possession is a great way to measure it, and the Suns are tied for fifth fewest seconds used per possession in the NBA. Now, on Saturday night against Orlando, and that number is for the season is 14.1. They're tied with Sacramento, Memphis. They're just ahead of Golden State, just ahead of the Lakers, just behind teams like Milwaukee, of course, with Giannis and his transition impact. Charlotte, who, they don't play any defense, and LaMelo likes to run. So the Suns are right there in the thick of the fastest teams in the NBA, 14.1 seconds used per possession, which means that, they're taking a shot around the 10-minute mark of the shot clock, 10-second mark, 13.3 seconds used per possession on Saturday night against the Orlando Magic. So almost a full second fewer that they were taking to get a shot up against Orlando compared to their full season mark. Incredible. I mean, already incredible, and only they're able to really kick it into high gear when they are, playing a team that's missing a lot of shots, turning the ball over a lot, etc. What's important to know about all of that, we know, right, that the Suns want to play faster. I talked on my recap show of the Bucks game on Friday about how Monty acknowledged that a lot of how they have been playing this season is directly based upon what they learned about themselves against Milwaukee. And a big part of that was, hey, we are playing into Drew Holiday's hands and the Bucks defense's hands when we walk the ball up, isolate too much, don't move the ball in a quick rhythmic way, right? We're playing into their hands because Holiday can muck everything up and the possession is over before it ever started. So that in and of itself at like a macro level is a big deal for the Suns. The other reason it's a big deal that Tory Craig is in there helping this out and that other guys are learning it and giving him a place to come add to in the first place in terms of pace is something that Seth Partnow actually acknowledged. I think it might have been about the Suns. And for anyone who doesn't know, he writes at The Athletic. He used to be in the Bucks front office. So if anyone knows the importance of playing fast, it's him, because they've been incredible at it for years, and it's part of how their offense works so well. He said that you basically get an extra point onto your offensive rating, your points per 100 possessions for your offense. You add a point to that per second that you're able to cut off of your pace, right? So if you use 14 seconds to score like the Suns do most of the time, you'll be at 1 offensive rating. On Saturday, they were at about 13, so you can add a point per 100 possessions to their offensive rating, which adds up over the course of the season. So any little addition you can get to your pace is going to generally help your offense, especially when you have players who can fit into that, like Tory Craig can, of course. So him coming in and the team feeding off of his energy, we already know that they play with better energy when he's out there, and him being able to do some of that playmaking, short roll, three-point shooting, finishing at the back. Like, he is a perfect transition player for this team, and he showed it right away. Incredible stuff. Lineup-wise, as I have teased a couple of times now, the other reason why I think this works, why his short roll passing was able to really flourish on Saturday night, why you've seen the offense in general work a little bit better. I'm going to get into the numbers again, so do not be afraid here. I'm going to make them digestible for all of you. It's not anything too complicated. It's just pure possessions here. So if you go and look up, this is from Cleaning the Glass. If you look up when Bridges, Johnson, and Crowder are on the court, right? So sometimes that'll be a super small ball lineup where Crowder is at the 5 and maybe Bridges and Paul or Booker and Paul are out there. A lot of the time it will be one of those two guys playing point guard effectively with a regular big man, Ayton, McGee, Dario Saric last season, etc. And then, of course, there are a few there where it's actually Tory Craig playing the 5. Last season, during the regular season, the Suns, with Bridges, Crowder, and Johnson on the floor, the Suns did that for 249 possessions over the course of the whole entire full season. The number one lineup where they did that was Paul and Ayton with those 3 wings, Booker off the floor. And a lot of that came, I believe, when Booker was sidelined with injuries. They would go to that as a starting lineup from time to time. Now, so 249 over the course of a full season. Now, in the playoffs, they went away from it almost entirely. Now, part of that is getting your best players on the court more. So you want to have Booker, Ayton, and Paul out there as much as possible. So you go away from a lineup where one of those guys inherently is not going to be out there. But they only did it for 72 possessions last year in the playoffs. The most common was, again, Paul, Ayton in those 3. Second most common was actually Paul, Booker in those 3 going small. Now, this year, This is before Tory Craig ever got here, mind you, of course, right? I mean, there were a few possessions like this yesterday, but not enough for it to make any sort of dent in the data. Already, we have 20 whatever games to go, 226 possessions they've done this, and they've been infinitely more efficient when they do it this season. So, again, like I talked about with small ball in general, that extends. I talked about how the Suns have been playing small ball more, right? Ishwain right at the 5, Tory Craig, or Jay Crowder at the 5, and now Tory Craig is going to be an option there. They are also going with these bigger wing lineups more consistently. What that does is it's going to be a lineup that's going to create more turnovers on defense because it's just a better defensive lineup than, like it or not, those guys are better defensively than Booker is for the most part, or better than Paul is for the most part. And it's going to give you that versatility to be big and small at the same time because all those guys are pretty great, versatile offensive pieces. Bridges can cut and he can shoot and he can play make. Jay Crowder has that floater game that he's been developing, and he can get on the offensive glass from time to time, and he can shoot threes. Cam Johnson can drive it on you and dunk it, and he can pass the ball when he needs to, and of course he can shoot. Tory Craig, we've talked about all the different things he can do. So utilizing Craig in these lineups, which the Suns have already shown themselves to be more willing to use than they were last year, is only going to help. Only going to help. And Craig, I am buying and drinking the Kool-Aid of this move more and more and more. I love it, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here. All right, let's take a second to talk about Aaron Holiday because I actually do think he could play a pretty substantial role, and I think he calls into question one particular Suns player's role going forward and what it could be. Maybe it's going to be a little bit smaller. We'll talk about that in a second. First, though, football might be over this season, but basketball is in full steam ahead mode for both pro and college. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props, and more, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all of your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news. That's right, they have content now on the website as well. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC, and Olympic coverage throughout the rest of the winter. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions across the sports landscape. BetOnline, where the game starts. Aaron Holiday, I think the most important part about him when it comes to this season and what we, quote unquote, learned about his role and what he'll be for this team is that he did not play until the end of the game, right? I mean, for all intents and purposes against the Magic, I think that's what we learned, right? They don't quite trust him yet. And that's totally fine. I think his game is pretty transportable to being a 0.5 fit. He's, he has no problem slinging some threes. He can drive into the teeth of the defense and kick out to a shooter. And I think I think my initial reaction on trade night was his efficiency from a turnover perspective has been pretty good as well. He's always been a guy who's had a 2-to-1 or better assist to turnover ratio during the course of his career. So all of that makes me feel like he'll be a good fit. But Monty stuck with Elfrid Payton as the guy, as the backup point guard against Orlando, even with Holiday being active. Holiday did not get in there until garbage time. So we will probably have to continue to wait on Holiday to really seize that, to really get an opportunity to seize that backup point guard spot, let alone if he does it or not. However, what I think is interesting here is, well, first of all, Elfrid Payton's been playing a whole heck of a lot better, and it's not a coincidence. I intentionally talked about the pace first here because Payton tends to excel in pace. I think Aaron Holiday will be a guy who will also excel with a quicker pace. What we already know is Cameron Payne is a guy who is going to excel when there is better pace because there's going to be less defense between him and the basket, which for him is very important because he's not an incredible finisher and he can settle for some bad decisions if there is a lot of bodies between him and the basket, and that drive and kick game doesn't always work. The 0.5 starts to, grind it down and he can struggle. But if they're playing fast, he's going to be in a better situation. So, with all of that said, you may know where I'm going here, but I could see a world. I don't think Elfrid Payton will be part of the rotation when everybody's healthy. Let me just start there. But if you believe, like I do, that Holiday has a pretty good chance to take Payton's place, because I think his fit in the 0.5 will be better, and I think defensively, you're not getting enough out of Payton to get him to play him just because of his defense anyway. So as long as Holiday can stay afloat and not kill you there, I think it'll be a wash. If that's all true, you know that Paul and Booker aren't going anywhere. They're going to be the top of the rotation. And that Cameron Payne is going to be, for all intents and purposes, the 6th or 7th or 8th man. He's going to be in the playoff rotation. Then I think you're starting to get to a point where you're wondering, is Landry Shamet going to have a role here come playoff time? Is the Aaron Holiday move quietly insurance for Shamet more so than it is, let's cut Chris Paul's minutes down or any of that? That's great. That's true. And I hope it happens. But I think bigger picture, this is insurance for Landry Shamet. And don't forget, the Suns also, when they traded for Aaron Holiday, also acquired his restricted rights. He will be a restricted free agent this summer, and the Suns will have matching rights if they extend a qualifying offer to him. So I don't think he's going to be taking Cameron Payne's role and becoming this excellent backup point guard. I think ideally he's probably more of a depth piece for a championship caliber team because he's a little smaller. His defense can't have as much of an impact. He really is more of just a three-point scorer and a passer. He doesn't have that inside scoring game. There are limitations, but I can definitely see a world in which he's just straight up more impactful than than Landry Shamet for the rest of this season, that he fits better, that he's more aggressive, that he just helps this team more than Shamet has been able to. And it kills me to say that, but I was on the Suns Twitter space the other day during the deadline, and I was frankly, I guess shocked, kind of saddened a little bit by how out Suns fans seem to be on Landry Shamet. And I can't say that I disagree, but it's just kind of crazy to think how far we've come. Shamet this season is shooting 37% from the field, just 30 from three, which is below average, and isn't really helping in any other aspect of the game. The passing has not been there. The defense, while he is maybe better than I anticipated, he is still, for the most part, neutral to bad, neutral to below average on that end, just because of his lack of size and whatnot. So like I said, if Holiday can just be neutral to below average like he is, then you could see him sliding in there. So I think that's a subtle part of all of this that I don't think got enough attention. I think a lot of Suns fans are seeing it and going, okay, great. Less Elfrid Payton, which will be, nice, at least just to have another option. If you do have Chris Paul miss a game in the playoffs, or, somebody's in foul trouble, Devin Booker is in foul trouble, or gets, too many texts or any of that stuff, you're going to have more depth there. That's true. Less minutes for Chris Paul, very good as well. But I think a low-key part of this is that Holiday could be a guy more quickly than we realize, who could slide in there for Landry Shamet. And I think he's going to be able to provide enough of that shooting, which is really all that you needed out of Shamet in the first place, is smart ball movement and shooting. If he can just do that, then he can be a makeshift Landry Shamet, and we can cross the contract bridge when we come to it. Shamet is getting paid like he is much, much more than that. But maybe that's what happens down the road, and I think it could be pretty interesting. The reality, though, is, of course, Paul and Booker are going to get the lion's share of minutes. Payne, I still think, is going to get the lion's share of minutes behind them. You have Tory Craig and JaVale McGee and Cam Johnson, who are all going to get minutes in the playoffs. Bismack Biyombo as well. There's probably not a lot of minutes to go around, a do-or-die type of playoff moment for Shamet or for Holiday. Neither one of them, I don't think, are going to be able to prove enough to cut into that upper crust of the Suns rotation. But it is long-term for who gets paid and whatnot. It's an interesting conversation. And it's just interesting to see, who ends up being on the floor for this team the rest of the regular season and into the playoffs in the early rounds. But that'll wrap us up, guys. We got another busy week of games this week. The Clippers, the Rockets, all of it. I will be here every step of the way with you. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen. Now go make Locked On Bets your second listen. I have a feeling they'll tell you Suns championship odds. It's a good bet. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.